There are some people who believe they have psychic powers.
It's almost like I might have a TV camera in my head.
Some claim they can see the past.
And I saw this young man drag her into the woods.
Others claim they can see the future.
In the dream, I saw the flash and I heard the screaming.
Some psychics have assisted police investigators.
Nancy has this vision. She was just absolutely 100% correct.
And psychics have even worked with government intelligence agencies.
Was it of benefit to the U.S. intelligence services? And the answer is yes.
But skeptics say psychic powers do not exist.
There's lots and lots of claims. It's easy to make a claim. The question is there good evidence?
It's almost like I might have a TV camera in my head with that person's information running like a continuous reel or show.
Laurie McQuarrie claims she has psychic powers.
I get sensations. Sometimes I feel like I'm onto other levels of awareness.
Over the years, she says she used her ability to help police. There is one case that has always stayed with her.
In Phil Brooks' case, I had the strongest feeling this was vindictiveness.
In the American West, it's 1994 in Wheeler County, Oregon.
The very first thing I heard about Phil Brooks was that a cowboy was missing. And nobody seemed to know what had happened. You know, when a cowboy is missing, you got to figure something bad has probably happened.
Rick Stieber is an author who has been writing about the Brooks case for years.
Phil was just kind of an ordinary Eastern Oregon boy. He stood 6'2", he weighed 190 pounds, he was 23 years old. He worked hard, he played hard. Jimmy Collins, who owned the ranch, was the first one to find that Phil was missing. That morning when Jimmy came out, Phil's pickup was there, the horse wasn't there, and Phil wasn't there.
24 hours after he left the ranch, there is still no sign of the cowboy.
That evening, they found the horse. It was kind of surmised that his horse had bucked him off. And he was lying out there with a broken leg, maybe at the worst, a broken back.
Have this area to clear. We're looking for male subjects.
The next day, Wheeler County authorities launched a search and rescue team to try to find the missing man.
As the search team eased up the ridge, they looked up in front of them. One of them spotted something out of place. As they got closer, they saw that it was a hat and that Phil Brooks was lying there on the ground. They could see on his shirt from the blood that something had happened to his chest area.
Base, we've located a cowboy hat that looks like it could pertain.
The sheriff of Wheeler County came up, he lifted up the shirt and saw a round hole.
The cowboy had been shot in the chest with a high-powered rifle. Investigators weren't sure if they were looking at a crime or an accident.
At first, most people assumed, even though it wasn't rifle hunting season, maybe somebody was poaching.
Where were you at the time?
After 2 years of investigating the mysterious death with no resolution, police step outside normal operating procedures and reach out to psychic Lori McQuarrie for assistance.
I've tried over the years to think of better ways to say it. I'm a psychic. What I do is I read energy. I'll get an image of a name, or I will get something that I think is particular to the case. I get them just like it's a show in my head, a rerun of a movie. And that's how it comes to me. I'm the messenger.
Many people, including author and skeptic Benjamin Radford, are not convinced about the reality of psychic powers.
Psychics will claim to tell the future. You know, they'll read your palms, they'll do tarot cards. Other psychics claim to solve crimes, for example, for police or missing persons cases. Other psychics claim to be able to predict the future. There are many people who claim to have psychic abilities. The problem is that when you put these abilities under controlled tests and you closely examine them, they fail.
Regardless of what skeptics think, McQuarrie claims she had a very strong physical reaction in the case of the missing cowboy.
When I'm working a case, if the police say, is this person dead or alive? If they're gone, I get a sense heavy right in the middle of my chest. And I found that to be pretty accurate. In Phil Brooks' case, the first thing I remember very strongly, this was personal. This was not an accident. This was something that Phil had been upset, angry about.
I'm aware of psychics claiming they have the ability to help police, other investigators, resolve crimes.
Ronald Lindsay is an author and skeptic who is not convinced that alleged psychics have anything to offer law enforcement.
My understanding of the track record of these psychics is that it's actually not very good.
Oregon police are still trying to determine if the cowboy's death is accidental. But McQuarrie believes it was cold-blooded murder.
I was very, very adamant with the detective. This was not an accident.
Psychics often claim they have insights into crimes. And in the eastern United States, another psychic offers assistance to New Jersey police.
When I experience sight psychically, I have vision, I have hearing. Outside of the known parameters, I get knowledge that I never knew I had.
September 12th, 1985 is an afternoon like any other in Washington Township, until a young high school girl misses her bus home.
This case started out as a missing person case for us. It was a 14-year-old girl that simply did not return home from school. And it would not be that unusual for something like that to happen with a 14-year-old.
Retired police detective George Duker spent 25 years on the force and says this is a case he'll never forget.
This particular girl we knew. We knew her. She was a good kid. She really was.
I'm not kidding.
She was talented. She was into music and art and things, and just certainly not a problem.
I had a woman call me who said that a girl in her town who she knew is missing.
Nancy Olin Weber claims to be a psychic and has occasionally offered information to police over the last 30 years. When she learns of the missing schoolgirl, she claims to get visual clues.
I had a vision. I saw her as a beautiful spirit, bright, talent, caring. The kind of person everybody liked to be friends with, and the kind of person who liked to be friends with everyone. I get little pieces of the puzzle. Little tiny glimpses. And other times I see the whole scenario. It's like a movie. Sometimes it's like a hologram where I can look inside and see things and feel things. My internal senses are as attuned to the world as my external senses. I have no clue why. I just happened to be the right antenna for the right situation at that time. And so when it came to Rachel, I felt like I was watching her. I was watching her with her girlfriends, walking home from school. I saw them all loving her.
Orlin Weber is concerned for the girl's safety, so she calls police and leaves a message offering information.
I immediately got an impression in my mind, and I didn't even want to look at it. It was pretty horrible.
Orlin Weber claims her visions get more alarming, especially when she sees a young man connected to the missing schoolgirl.
I had a vision. She was alone, and I saw him.
Meantime, the Washington Township Police intensify their search.
Early 2000. It looks natural. Then as the day progressed, we started interviewing witnesses. One of the things that repeatedly came up is there was this guy walking in the direction, and they saw Rachel also walking in the direction of her home. Each witness that we talked to brought him and her closer together. And that was the last anyone saw of either one of them.
Orlin Weber claims her visions are showing more specific information about the suspect.
Then I saw a gas station that they would pass, and I saw this young man working there, and I saw him looking at her. She epitomized what he could never have.
Unknown to Orlin Weber, witness accounts eventually lead police to question a young man named Michael Manfredonia.
We got a description of this man, and he kind of matched the description of a guy that used to work just down the street in a gas station. We interviewed him initially as a witness for a couple of reasons. One is we still didn't have Rachel, so we had no knowledge of everything happening to her at this point. Since he met the description of the gentleman walking toward her, maybe he saw something. So we started interviewing him as a potential witness. Anything unusual on Fairview Ave yesterday? Nothing at all.
And I felt him as being the kid who other children's families said, don't play with him.
We questioned him at length. Mike, it just didn't seem right. Did you ever go back? We started to get some bad vibes. Anything about that at all? Nothing, huh? You were just up and down the street, then you had, we saw you walking down there, somebody saw you. We're not getting the whole truth. There's something there that he's hiding. We wasn't sure what it was.
I saw her passing by, I felt, going home from school, but she was alone. And I saw him walking. And I saw him drag her into the woods fast.
In the western United States, Oregon police are a year and a half into the investigation of the mysterious death of cowboy Phil Brooks. And psychic Laurie McQuarrie offers investigators information in the case.
I visited the scene of the case and where it happened. It's a very beautiful country, and yet It was permeated with such sadness.
McQuarrie senses that Brooks's death is not a tragic hunting accident.
I could feel the energy of the moment in that shooter who was absolutely determined that this was going to be Phil's last day. Period.
Do psychics give information to police? The answer is yes, absolutely. They give all sorts of information to police. They give information that's wrong, some of it's right, it's all over the place.
However, some people believe there could be something more to psychic powers.
My expertise, in part, is on people who have telepathy or precognitive experiences.
Neuroscientist and psychiatrist Diane Powell studies brain activity of autistics, savants, and self-proclaimed psychics.
I don't have any vested interest in this. I'm not a professional psychic researcher. I'm not a professional skeptic of psychic abilities. What do you say about the symmetry between the right and the left brain? What I am is a clinician who sees patients and tries to understand what is going on with them. I will frequently find in people who have a history of psychic abilities that there is epileptiform activity in their brain.
So that pattern is called an entrainment response.
What's happening when you see epileptiform activity is you're actually seeing several neurons or brain cells working simultaneously. So instead of having this cell trigger this cell, trigger that cell, what you're having is more like a wave of activity of several cells. The same thing that was happening with psychic brain activity.
The backgrounds, you know. And
there are people that claim that if you compare epileptics to psychics, or people who claim to have psychic abilities, that brain scans reveal similar things. Except that in epileptics, what you have is you have different parts of the brain firing at one time. You don't have psychic abilities. There's no real connection between the two.
Back in Wheeler County, Oregon, what began as a missing persons case has become a possible murder investigation.
Suddenly, there was a homicide. Well, you don't have homicides in Wheeler County. The last homicide was 50 years before.
With few clues, no witnesses, and no suspects, police are at a loss.
State police, they didn't know where to go with their investigation. Everything had kind of been dead ends. Didn't know who the killer was, but by God, they were going to find him.
Later, McQuarrie remembers that Brooks's horse came back alone after he disappeared.
That horse had information. That horse saw it. So that horse was part of the evidence.
McQuarrie draws on her alleged psychic abilities, which she claims include a special bond with animals.
I believe animals have a very strong psychic connection to people. As with the horse in Phil's case, I immediately picked up the terror that horse felt. That horse was so panic-stricken that whatever had happened to its owner was going to happen to him next.
Sometimes you'll see cases where people will say they're communicating with animals that witness something. How do you verify that? You can't ask the horse.
While some psychics claim they were born with particular abilities, McQuarrie believes she gained her powers from a traumatic head injury after falling from a horse.
People often ask me where my ability comes from. They sort of make it sound like, is it something you buy at the store? There still isn't complete explanation, but I think it was a direct result of a head injury I had at 18. I had lost grasp of one of the reins. I went to grab it and fell right off the horse on my head. I started having unusual dreams within a month. It was startling to me because they grew in intensity and accuracy, and what they began about were plane crashes that happened on the news, and I dreamed them about 2 to 3 days before they happened.
And it was determined to have crashed into the...
I really thought maybe I was a little unhinged, that there was something wrong with me, but the dreams kept getting stronger and stronger. I don't hear voices. I hear thoughts in my head. That's my own voice telling me things. You don't have to fall on your head in order to recognize the ability. A lot of times people just going through traumatic incidents in their lives will suddenly feel that opening of knowledge of otherworldly things. When I held the bullet fragment, it immediately spoke to me about not so much where the bullet ended up, which was tragic enough, but where it came from. That bullet had been fired by somebody with such rage, with such vindictiveness, that probably when even the bullet was fired, they weren't even seeing a man standing there. Who shot this?
Some people claim to do what's called psychometry, which is when they hold an object in their hands and they say, I can tell you about the person that owned this or the person that touched this. There's lots and lots of claims. It's easy to make a claim. The question is there good evidence? And, you know, if this person really can do that, they should be working for the FBI.
Soon, McQuarrie claims her visions told her something about the person who shot Brooks.
And it's a woman pulling the trigger.
On the other side of the United States, New Jersey police are still looking for a missing 14-year-old girl.
You see the girl that was walking your way? You know the girl. No, you gotta look.
Police interview Michael Manfredonia, who witnesses have seen approaching the missing schoolgirl.
People used to see walk by the middle school all the time when you walked at the gas station.
Separately, psychic Orland Weber says her visions involving the crime become more violent.
I saw him drag her into the woods, and I felt him being inwardly troubled. And I felt him explode.
Orland Weber claims she was born with her psychic abilities.
I can see it, I can feel it, I can sense it, I can hear it. Just my way. As a child, I couldn't step into it at will. It would simply happen all the time. And so I learned as an adult how to keep it going when it was appropriate.
In the case of the missing schoolgirl, Orland Weber at this point has yet to hear back from police. Meantime, investigators questioning Michael Manfredonia suspect he knows more than he's telling them. But without concrete evidence or a victim, they're forced to release him.
I organized an extensive search team for Rachel. And the sergeant called me and he said, we found one of her shoes. I was trying to think good thoughts.
They were praying that she was fine. I knew she wasn't.
But then I got to the crime scene. and I saw the reality of what happened.
Now, for police, it's a murder investigation. Eventually, police get back to Orland Webber, who'd left a message offering information.
We really hadn't used psychics up until that time. And we had heard of Nancy because I know she had worked with a neighboring police department. And so she wanted to talk to us about a potential suspect.
Hello, Nancy. Yes, hi.
We really didn't get a chance to talk to Nancy until after we had already found Rachel. So our next big objective, obviously, after finding Rachel, was to now, in our minds, it was Michael Manfredonia. Now our search turned to him.
When I described the young man to him on the phone, I could hear him be pretty devastated. I have a suspicion, and it's not good.
We held our cards very close. We didn't tell Nancy who we suspected, how we suspected it. We didn't give her names. We gave her nothing to work on.
Orland Webber insists she had no prior knowledge that led her to conclude the killer's name was Michael.
Yeah, I see a young man named Michael. I described Michael to the detective.
Matter of fact, she actually told us. His name is Michael. Rachel is dead, and a boy named Michael did it. And that just floored us.
In Oregon, investigators on the Phil Brooks case are also now searching for a killer. Self-proclaimed psychic Lori McQuarrie has been assisting on the case.
I can feel the energy.
McQuarrie and police now consider the possibility that a woman might have pulled the trigger.
But this isn't so much about Phil as it's about where it came from.
Police bring in a number of people for questioning, but no one is arrested. Police say the key evidence, the high-powered rifle that killed Brooks, has never been found. To this day, police strongly believe the cowboy was murdered. And Phil Brooks's killing remains an open, unsolved case.
I don't solve cases. I like to think I add additions to them. Maybe things they hadn't looked at before, some small piece that would make a real difference. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to have all the information all the time. I absolutely feel that everything I got initially on this case was right on target. It's still an open case, but I believe this case will be resolved.
Neuroscientist and psychiatrist Diane Powell continues to research how the brain functions in people claiming to have psychic abilities.
I have seen that there are certain conditions that people have that predispose them to more psychic experiences than your average person.
Powell is exploring the possibility that there's a pattern inside the brains of people who have these alleged abilities.
In psychic abilities, the left brain and the outer regions of the brain play less of a role. They're subdued, and the information is really coming from deeper parts of the brain, the parts of our brain that are involved in dreaming. I think that it could be of tremendous value for science to investigate psychic phenomena.
British psychologist and skeptic, Professor Chris French, who studies paranormal anomalies, says most scientists don't believe in psychic abilities.
The vast majority of natural scientists, including physicists, are actually extremely skeptical when it comes to paranormal claims. Inevitably, there are always one or two mavericks. There are some physicists who have actually tried to produce theoretical accounts of how it might be possible to see into the future. As far as I'm concerned, they're putting the cart before the horse. Until we've got good evidence that people really can do this, we don't need to try and explain it.
In England, not far from London, self-proclaimed psychic Chris Robinson claims he can glimpse the future, which comes to him in fragments as he dreams.
I had a dream, the nuclear radioactive fallout cloud approaching London from the east. A week later, Chernobyl. That did make me sit up and think that that was really strange.
Chris Robinson believes his psychic abilities are a result of a near-death experience.
When I was 16 years old, I had a motorcycle accident. I was very seriously injured. On my way to the hospital, I clearly remember looking down on myself in the ambulance on that journey.
After that, Robinson says he began to have dreams that foretold the future.
It's like being in the middle of a radar screen. And it's as if the future in front of you pops up on that screen, and the dreams allow you to see little bits of it. So if something is going to happen around me today or tomorrow, that event will appear on the radar screen.
He describes his dreams, which are often about large-scale disasters.
Chernobyl, dozens of IRA attacks, the bombing in Manchester, then 9/11, and a variety of other incidents scattered around the world.
Professor and psychologist Gary Schwartz has had a long association with Robinson and believes he is a special case.
Christopher Robinson became known as the Dream Detective, a man who sees the future in his dreams.
Robinson says his dream about a 747 exploding over Scotland put him on the police radar.
I had told 2 police officers at Scotland Yard. And I also gave them some other information where and how the bomb was placed on the aeroplane, and the fact that it was going to happen that day.
On December 21st, Pan Am Flight 103 blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing 270 people.
Lockerbie was a turning point because obviously you can't tell Scotland Yard that a plane is going to get blown up and not get questioned when it does. And I spent the next day at Scotland Yard talking to people from departments I'd never heard of. As a dream psychic, I've worked with a variety of organisations in the United Kingdom, and since 9/11, people in the United States.
Not everyone believes that Robinson can see what he claims he can.
Most psychics are sincere people. They really believe that they have the powers they claim. The problem is that they can't prove it. They certainly can't prove it to a scientist's standard of evidence.
When Schwartz heard about Robinson, he was intrigued. In 2001, he set up a series of experiments to test his alleged psychic powers.
I helped design an experiment that would test whether Christopher could be able to dream about a location that he was going to be taken to in the future. The design of the experiment was that there would be 10 locations that would be picked. Each of them would be unique, and I was kept blind to those locations. What would happen is He'd go to sleep and dream where he was going to be taken. The next day, this would be day one of the experiment, he would then write down this information. The next morning, I would come to his hotel, and he would show me what he had written. Close your eyes.
Okay.
What are the words for today?
Pitch, sun and mirror, or Olympus.
This is the Kitt Peak National Observatory. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
You got sun and Sunday
and mirror
and
CCD devices.
Right, it's all about the sun. It's all the whole thing.
Schwartz claims he tested Robinson's psychic dream abilities in 10 different locations over 10 days. And he says Robinson correctly predicted multiple details in each location.
The results were extraordinary. Christopher's dreams were accurate for 10 out of 10 sites. He was just in super motivated, super rare form.
The universe talks to you, doesn't it?
The universe talks to me.
The totality of the findings from this particular demonstration clearly indicate that something anomalous, some special psychic ability or set of abilities was being demonstrated.
The meaning of dreams has been a baffling subject since the biblical age.
If you look in the Bible, a famous story of Joseph and his dreams was looked upon as, oh, this is a way to foretell the future. In part, that's because people didn't understand what dreams were about.
The ancients believed that the dream time was actually given by the gods, and that was a time when we were communicating with the spirits. And so it's natural to think that somehow the visions and ideas that come to us in dreams are somehow prophetic and meaningful. But if you look at the history of it, there's no proof that it's true.
During the Cold War, however, the US government believed so strongly in the possible potential of the power of the mind, it set up a program called Stargate to develop psychic intelligence gathering.
The CIA had found out about ESP, clairvoyance, remote viewing research taking place in foreign countries around the world.
Skip Atwater is a former US Army intelligence officer who worked on Stargate.
They commissioned Stanford Research Institute to replicate those experiments. They considered the possibility of an intelligence threat. If these people could see into our most secret places, that would be a problem. There was about $20 million spent in 25 years. In terms of government programs, it was really a pretty cheap program.
Through Stargate's system of remote viewing, operatives would try to imagine scenarios a world away while sitting in an army base just outside Washington, D.C.
Remote viewing is very much like the early definition of extrasensory perception. Ability to describe or access information that's blocked from our ordinary way of knowing.
Dale Graff is the former director of the U.S. Stargate project.
The Stargate program was good old-fashioned operational projects, finding somebody, finding a missing airplane, all the way to what's really going on in secret facilities. Later on, we began working with the customs people, with the DEA, with drug trafficking.
Was it of benefit to the U.S. intelligence services? And the answer is yes, both in the Cold War era and in the post-Cold War era.
It wouldn't surprise me if there were a few successes in Stargate. You can't have that many psychics, that many people making that many predictions and not have some of them turn out to be right. The question is, were they successful more often than chance? And the answer is no.
An independent review in 1995 concluded that Stargate had limited use for intelligence operations, and it was terminated.
Project Stargate was eventually shut down after psychologists analyzed the data and found that there was no useful information coming out of the program. Our psychic spies were not helping locate missing persons. They weren't helping locate military targets. They weren't helping do these sorts of things. And so essentially they pulled the plug on it.
Despite Stargate's termination, there are some people who still believe in the power of psychics. Back in New Jersey, police investigating the murder of a 14-year-old schoolgirl now turn their attention to a potential witness turned suspect, a man they've already interviewed, Michael Manfredonia.
One of the most frustrating parts of that was that the judge said to us, after a period of time, you have no crime, you have no suspect. You have to release him. So it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and myself and another detective drove him home.
Once he is released from questioning, Manfredonia disappears. Detective Duca pays a visit to an unlikely source, psychic Nancy Orlen Weber.
When we called Nancy, she had said, is it possible that you can bring me something that he had touched?
Did you bring anything of Michael's?
I did.
Orlen Weber provides police with details of what she sees regarding the suspect's whereabouts.
The first thing I see, he's on top of some kind of mountain and there's home below here. But where he is situated are these huge 55-gallon drums. And here you've got this collection of food, candy wrappers, cigarette butts. There's some drug that he just took a lot of. I'm watching him look down, waiting for his father's truck. Yes?
Yes, he does. He has a business truck.
Thank you.
Nancy then has this vision of where Michael was. And very clearly told us, look, you know, he's up on a hill, there's a little clearing there, there's these 55-gallon drums.
The house is surrounded by law enforcement.
Police say they found and arrested Manfredonia in a spot just as Orlen Weber had described.
It's over. You're going to find the cigarette butts and the candy wrappers. It's over.
Everything that we didn't tell her, she was telling us. And it absolutely matched perfectly. And we were just kind of blown away.
Ultimately, Michael Manfredonia was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. While investigators say Orlen Weber didn't solve the crime, Duca believes she knew certain facts the police didn't disclose and that were not reported in the media.
When you look at the drawing that Nancy had made, and if you took a picture of that scene, it was like, put them side by side. They were almost identical. And you would say, how does that happen? Nancy has this vision. She was just absolutely 100% correct.
I just do the work and leave. For me, that's my job. I'm part of a team. I'm not the answer.
When it comes to using psychics, I would say, check it out. Listen to them. Run down their leads.
Hello, Nancy.
Whatever resource is available to law enforcement, you've got to use it.
While psychics continue to insist that their visions are real, skeptics say there is simply no proof.
I don't pretend to be 100% accurate. I don't expect to be 100% accurate. I'm human. Can I be wrong? I don't like to be. I would rather be right on target, but it's also part of the penance of being human that I take.
I have vision. When I focus and attune to it and make practical use of it for myself or others, I'm an effective human being then, and I feel a purpose.
I've always been asked, why is it you? It isn't just me. I meet people every day that experience the same kind of things that I experience. This is something that happens to most of us at some time in our lives.
The fact is that we all foresee the future all the time. Just to live our everyday lives, we've got to plan ahead. But if you mean, can people foresee the future other than just by using kind of inference and available information, the evidence doesn't support that.
I wish we had good evidence of psychics. I really do. They could be incredibly useful, you know, just in solving crimes and benefiting society. But so far, the evidence just isn't there. Maybe one day.